The Venara system hung like a jeweled mobile in the darkness of space, its three suns casting overlapping shadows across the research station. Through the reinforced viewport of Laboratory 7, Dr. Arya Vale watched the phenomenon that had brought her across 17 light-years to this remote corner of the galaxy. The void portal pulsed with impossible colors, some that human eyes could detect and others that only specialized equipment could record, as it tore a ragged hole in the fabric of reality. Structural integrity holding at 87%. Arya noted into her wrist recorder, her voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. Portal diameter unchanged at 4.6 meters, energy signature oscillating at predicted intervals. It was the year 2387, and humanity had spread across dozens of star systems, but nothing in their expansion had prepared them for the discovery of the void portals, first detected at the edges of charted space just 14 months ago. These dimensional gateways defied conventional physics. The multi-dimensional exploration team, comprised of the brightest scientific minds and most skilled warriors, had been hastily assembled by the Interplanetary Council to investigate. Arya adjusted her specialized goggles, which allowed her to see spectrums beyond normal human vision. As the foremost expert in multidimensional physics, she had developed a theory about the portal's structure, that they weren't simply holes in space, but rather complex networks connecting countless dimensional planes. You keep staring at it like that, you might get pulled in without even stepping through, came a voice from behind her. Arya turned to see Captain Rylan Kaur, head of the security detail assigned to the exploration team. His weathered face had become a familiar sight over the past months of preparation. "That's not how the physics works," she replied, though her lips curved into a small smile. "The portal requires conscious entry. It won't simply swallow someone." "If you say so, Doctor." Rylan shrugged, his hand never straying far from the modified pulse weapon at his hip. "But I've seen a lot of strange things at the edges of known space. Things that shouldn't exist according to your physics books." Arya turned back to her instruments. "That's precisely why we're here, Captain. To rewrite those books." The laboratory doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss as engineer Lamine Ann entered, carrying a case of newly calibrated sensors. His expertise in quantum technology had made him invaluable to the mission. "The new dimensional anchors are ready," he announced, setting down the case. "These should allow us to maintain contact up to 3.7 minutes longer than the previous model." "Excellent," Arya said, examining one of the small devices. Each was no larger than her thumbnail, but contained technology that would have filled an entire room just 50 years ago. "What about the mapping protocol? Any progress?" Min An grimaced. "That's the challenging part. The sensors can record data, but translating it into a usable map is still problematic. The dimensional coordinates keep shifting in ways our computers struggle to interpret. Which is why we need direct observation," Arya said, more to herself than to her colleagues. "Sensor data alone won't be enough." The communication panel on the wall beeped, displaying Dr. Elena Sov's face. As the team's theoretical physicist, she coordinated data analysis from the main research vessel orbiting Venara Prime. "Arya, we've lost contact with Team Epsilon." Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her concern. The room fell silent. Team Epsilon, the 5th Reconnaissance Group, had entered a different void portal located in the Andromeda Arm 2 days ago. They were supposed to maintain hourly check-ins. "Complete communication blackout?" Rylan asked, stepping forward. "Yes, and—" Elena hesitated. "Based on the last data packet we received, Agent Valquez is no longer transmitting life signs." Arya felt her stomach tighten. Valquez had been one of their most experienced field agents, with specialized training in extreme environments. "What does Central Command want us to do?" Min-an asked, his fingers nervously tapping against the sensor case. They're convening an emergency meeting in 3 hours. Elena replied, but they're leaning toward postponing all portal entries until we have more data. Arya's eyes drifted back to the swirling void. They were scientists at the frontier of human knowledge. Delays meant lost opportunities, and potentially greater risks as the portals continued to multiply across the galaxy. We can't afford to wait, she said finally. If the portals are connected as I theorize, what happened to Team Epsilon could happen here too. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Rylan studied her face. What are you suggesting, Dr. Vale? I'll go in first, Arya said, the decision crystallizing in her mind even as she spoke it aloud. Alone, with modified sensors and a new protocol focused specifically on mapping the traps and dangers. Absolutely not, Rylan countered immediately. Central Command would never approve a solo mission, especially after losing contact with Epsilon. Then we don't tell them it's solo, Arya replied, turning to face her colleagues. We tell them we've developed a new approach, which is true. We'll say the team will enter in stages, with advanced mapping taking priority. And who exactly approved this plan? Elena asked through the communication panel, her eyebrow raised. You did, Arya said, simply. All of you did. Because you know as well as I do that sending more people blindly into whatever took Valquez is irresponsible. But someone has to go, or we'll never know what happened to Epsilon, and we'll never understand these portals. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken objections and reluctant agreement. You'll need specialized equipment, Min-an finally said, his voice quiet. I can modify the anchor beacons to prioritize mapping data over standard telemetry, and I'll create a simulation model to interpret whatever you find. Elena added, her resignation evident. But Arya, promise me you'll retreat at the first sign of serious danger. Arya nodded, though they all knew such promises were easier made than kept. She turned to Rylan, whose jaw was set in disapproval. I don't like it, he said flatly. But if you're determined to do this, then we'll make sure you have every advantage we can give you. Over the next 36 hours, Arya prepared for her journey into the unknown. The team worked tirelessly, modifying equipment and developing new protocols. They created a specialized suit capable of withstanding extreme gravitational pressures and temperature variations. Min-an designed a revolutionary sensor array that would collect and transmit spatial data back to the station, allowing them to begin constructing a map of the dimensional network. On the morning of the expedition, Arya stood before the portal, now dressed in the sleek exploration suit. Its matte black surface was lined with glowing blue circuitry. Min-an's sensors integrated directly into the fabric. The anchors are set to pulse every 30 seconds, he explained, making final adjustments to the equipment strapped to her back. Each one will establish a fixed point in dimensional space that we can use to triangulate your position. And if I encounter anything unexpected? Arya asked. The suit has defensive capabilities, Rylan said, handing her a compact energy pistol that attached to her thigh. But remember, your priority is mapping and observation, not engagement. Arya nodded, securing the weapon. How long before you follow? Once we establish a stable map of the first 3-dimensional coordinates, I'll lead the second team in. Rylan said, should be about 2 hours behind you, assuming the data transmission works as planned. Dr. Elena Sov's face appeared on the nearby monitor. Arya, I've programmed the dimensional compass to guide you back to your entry point if needed. Don't hesitate to use it. Arya touched the small device attached to her wrist. It currently pointed directly at the portal before her, but once inside, it would orient toward her way home. Transmission test, she said, activating her helmet's communication system. "Receiving you clearly." Elena confirmed, "All systems nominal." Arya took a deep breath and looked at each of her colleagues in turn. Their faces were etched with a mixture of scientific curiosity and fear, emotions she herself felt coursing through her veins. Initiating portal entry in 3, 2, 1. She stepped forward into the swirling void. The world around her stretched and compressed simultaneously, colors inverting and gravity shifting. For a single terrifying moment, Arya felt herself existing in multiple places at once, her consciousness fragmenting like light through a prism. Then reality reasserted itself, and she stood in a vast, cathedral-like space. The architecture, if it could be called that, defied Euclidean geometry. Walkways twisted overhead like Mobius strips, while columns of pulsing energy stretched infinitely upward. The ground beneath her feet seemed solid, yet rippled like water with each step. "Initial entry successful," she reported, her voice sounding strangely flattened in the alien atmosphere. "I'm in what appears to be a central hub or nexus. Multiple pathways branch outward. Gravity is approximately 0.8 of Earth standard but fluctuating slightly." She deployed the first anchor, which embedded itself in the strange surface beneath her. It began to pulse steadily, establishing the first fixed point on their dimensional map. "Anchor 1 deployed and active," she reported. "Beginning preliminary exploration." Arya moved cautiously toward the nearest pathway. It shimmered like heat rising from desert sand, its edges indistinct. The sensor array in her suit hummed softly as it collected data. "I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with additional portals or gateways along each pathway," she reported. "It confirms my network theory. This isn't a single destination, but a transit point to multiple dimensional planes. Can you identify which path Team Epsilon might have taken?" Elena's voice came through with a slight delay, the signal already degrading across dimensional boundaries. Arya consulted her instruments. "Negative. All pathways show similar energy signatures. I'll need to investigate each one systematically." She chose the leftmost path and began to follow it, deploying another anchor as she moved deeper into the network. The passage gradually narrowed, and the already strange physics grew more pronounced. Gravity began to pull sideways rather than downward, forcing Arya to adjust her stance to avoid being drawn to what had previously been a wall. "Gravitational anomaly detected," she reported, her breathing slightly labored as she fought against the disorienting pull. "The gravity field appears to be a deliberate construct, not a natural phenomenon." "Deliberate?" Ryland's voice crackled through her comms. "Are you saying someone built this place?" "Or something," Arya replied, studying the way the gravity shifted in precise patterns. "This isn't random. It's too orderly, too intentional." As she pushed forward, the gravity suddenly intensified, driving her to her knees. The force pressed down with crushing weight, threatening to collapse her protective suit. "Gravity trap!" She gasped into her communicator. Pressure increasing exponentially. Her scientific mind raced even as her body struggled. The pattern wasn't random, it was cyclical. If she could time it correctly. Arya forced herself at a crawl forward, synchronizing her movements with the subtle fluctuations in the gravitational field. Each meter gained was a victory against the crushing pressure. Finally, she reached a threshold where the gravity abruptly returned to normal, sending her stumbling forward with the sudden release. "Trap navigated," she panted, leaning against a crystalline formation to catch her breath. "It appears to be a defensive mechanism. The gravity intensifies if you move against the established pattern, but releases if you synchronize with it." She deployed another anchor, marking the exit point of the gravity trap. "That's one trap identified and mapped," she said, her scientific detachment returning as her breathing normalized. "Recording full sensor data now." For the next several hours, Arya methodically explored the first level of the dimensional network, discovering and documenting a series of increasingly sophisticated traps. Some were physical, like corridors that folded in on themselves or sudden vacuum pockets that tried to extract the air from her suit. Others were more subtle, fields of energy that induced disorientation or panic. "It's like a security system," she noted as she mapped a particularly clever trap that created perfect holographic copies of herself, each moving independently. "Each trap seems designed to test different capabilities or weaknesses." "Whose security system?" Minan asked, his voice now significantly distorted by dimensional interference. "I don't know," Arya admitted, watching her duplicates mirror her movements with millisecond delays. "But whoever built this place clearly wanted to control who could pass through." She discovered that the holograms couldn't maintain their integrity when exposed to specific light frequencies. Adjusting her suit's external illumination, she dispersed the false images and continued forward. The deeper she ventured into the network, the more she began to notice patterns in the architecture and traps. There was a logic to the construction, a mathematical precision that spoke of advanced intelligence. Each anchor she deployed strengthened their map of the network, allowing Elena and Min An to begin constructing a three-dimensional model back at the research station. After what her chronometer told her was nearly 6 hours of exploration, Arya discovered something unexpected, faint traces of human technology. "I've found something," she reported, examining the scorched remnants of what appeared to be a standard-issue sensor beacon. "This belongs to Team Epsilon. They were here." "Any sign of Valquez or the others?" Ryland's voice was tense with concern for his fellow security officer. "Negative," Arya replied, scanning the area. "But there are marks on the floor here. Someone was dragged or pulled in that direction." She pointed her sensors toward a downward-sloping passage that pulsed with deep crimson energy. "I'm detecting a significant energy increase from that pathway," she said. "It could lead to another hub or nexus point." "Arya, your life signs are showing elevated stress levels." Elena interjected. "Perhaps you should deploy a final anchor and return. We have enough data to send in the second team." Arya hesitated, looking at the damaged equipment left behind by Team Epsilon. Her mission was to map the traps so others could navigate safely, but she couldn't ignore the possibility that members of Epsilon might still be alive somewhere in the network. "I'm going to follow this pathway," she decided. "If Epsilon encountered something beyond the traps we've mapped so far, we need to know what it is." "Dr. Vale," Ryland's voice hardened with military authority, "I must insist you return immediately. That's an order." "With respect." "Captain," Arya replied, already moving toward the Crimson Passage. "You can court-martial me when I get back." She muted the incoming communications temporarily, knowing her decision would cause heated debate back at the station. The mission parameters were clear. Mapping the dimensional traps was her priority, but leaving potential survivors behind went against everything she believed in. The Crimson Passage descended sharply, forcing Arya to use her suit's gravitational anchors to control her descent. The walls here were different, organic-looking, with vein-like structures pulsing with energy. The air itself seemed thicker, creating resistance against her movements. As she reached the bottom of the passage, Arya found herself in a vast spherical chamber. Unlike the geometric precision of the previous areas, this space felt almost alive. The floor rippled with each step, while the distant ceiling contracted rhythmically, like the inside of some enormous breathing organism. "New location mapped," she reported, reactivating communications, deploying Anchor 7. Only static answered her. Arya checked her instruments. The dimensional interference had increased exponentially, cutting her off from the research station. She was truly alone now, in a place no human had ever successfully navigated. In the center of the chamber stood a structure unlike anything she had encountered before. It resembled an obsidian throne, but its shape constantly shifted, as if the very concept of its form was fluid. Surrounding it were 5 humanoid figures, frozen in postures of supplication. With growing horror, Arya recognized the uniform patterns on 3 of the figures. Team Epsilon. She approached cautiously, her sensors working overtime to analyze the phenomenon. The figures weren't actually frozen, they were moving, but at such an infinitesimally slow rate that it appeared as stillness to the naked eye. Temporal distortion field, she whispered to herself, recording her observations for when communication was restored. They're caught in a time trap. One of the figures, Agent Valquez, she realized, was closest to the throne-like structure. His face was contorted in an expression of both wonder and terror, his hand outstretched toward the shifting object. Arya analyzed the temporal field, careful to maintain her distance. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. It created a bubble of extremely dilated time. What might be seconds for those caught within would be millennia outside. A perfect prison. She needed to find a way to disrupt the field without being caught herself. The stakes had just increased dramatically. Not only was she mapping traps, but now she was attempting a rescue operation with no backup. Carefully positioning herself at the edge of the chamber, Arya deployed a specialized probe from her equipment pack, designed to measure quantum fluctuations. It might provide insight into the temporal mechanics at work. The readings confirmed her suspicion. The field emanated from the throne-like object, creating concentric circles of increasingly dilated time. The effect weakened at precise intervals, like a pulsing heartbeat. "There's a pattern," she murmured, watching the energy readings fluctuate. A rhythm to the temporal distortion. If she timed her approach perfectly, she might be able to reach the frozen team members during a momentary weakening of the field. But one miscalculation would trap her as well, leaving no one to warn the others. Arya set her suit's sensors to alert her to the precise moment when the field weakened. As she waited, she felt a strange sensation, a whispering pressure against her mind, as if something was attempting to communicate. The feeling intensified as she stared at the shifting throne. Images began to flash through her consciousness, stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling across countless dimensions, all overseen by entities that existed beyond conventional understanding. Some kind of psychic probe, she noted into her recorder, fighting to maintain her focus. The trap has multiple layers, physical, temporal, and mental. Her sensor chimed, indicating a weakening in the temporal field. Arya moved instantly, sprinting toward the nearest member of Team Epsilon, a young scientist named Costas. She had precisely 3.7 seconds before the field would strengthen again. Reaching him, she attached a modified anchor to his suit, programming it to synchronize with his biological rhythms. The device hummed as it created a protective bubble around him, countering the effects of the temporal distortion. Costas gasped, suddenly released from his near stasis. "Dr. Vale, how?" "No time," Arya interrupted, already moving toward the next team member. "When I give the signal, run toward the passage I came through. Don't stop for anything." Her sensor chimed again. The field was strengthening. Arya cursed under her breath. She'd only managed to free one of them. "Go!" she shouted to Costas, who hesitated only briefly before running toward the exit. Arya retreated to the edge of the chamber, calculating her next approach. She had 4 more team members to save, including Valquez. and limited power in her suit for temporal shielding. As she prepared for the next attempt, the whispering in her mind returned, stronger now. The shifting throne seemed to focus its attention on her, its amorphous surface rippling with increased agitation. It's aware, she realized with dawning apprehension. The system is adaptive. Before she could react, the chamber transformed. The organic walls contracted, and the floor beneath her feet became transparent, revealing an endless abyss of swirling dimensional energy. The frozen team members were suddenly suspended in mid-air, rotating slowly around the throne like planets around a sun. This was beyond any trap she had mapped so far. This was the heart of the network, what she had begun to think of as the dark dimension, the deepest level of the multidimensional labyrinth. And it had just changed the rules. The whispering in her mind coalesced into a more coherent pressure, not quite words, but distinct impressions. It was scanning her consciousness, searching for something. Suddenly, the environment shifted again. Arya found herself standing in the research laboratory back on Venara Prime. Everything looked exactly as she had left it, down to the coffee mug on her workstation with its half-finished contents. "Arya?" Ryland's voice came from behind her. "Are you all right? You've been staring at that portal for hours." She turned sharply, her heart racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She had entered the portal, mapped numerous traps, found Team Epsilon. "This is another trap," she said firmly, more to herself than the illusion of Ryland before her. "A hallucinatory construct designed to make me doubt my own experiences." The false Ryland's expression darkened, his features subtly shifting. "Are you sure about that, Doctor? Perhaps what you think you experienced was the hallucination. Portal sickness affects many first-time travelers." Arya closed her eyes, focusing on what she knew to be true. The weight of the sensor pack on her shoulders, the slight pressure differential in her helmet, the data collected from the 7 anchors she had deployed. When she opened her eyes, the illusion flickered, revealing glimpses of the true chamber beyond. "Impressive," a voice echoed around her, still using Ryland's vocal patterns, but now openly artificial. "Most intruders are unable to distinguish reality from our constructs." "What are you?" Arya demanded. Fully breaking free of the illusion, she was back in the spherical chamber, but now the throne had taken on a vaguely humanoid shape. "We are the architects," the voice replied, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "We built the network when your species was still learning to make fire." "Why trap explorers?" Arya asked, her scientific curiosity momentarily overriding her fear. "Why create this elaborate security system?" "The network was not designed for your kind," the voice explained. "It exists as a transit system between dimensions where our civilization dwells. The traps are merely immigration control." "And Team Epsilon, the people you've frozen in time? They attempted to access restricted dimensions. Their biological and technological development is insufficient for safe transit." Arya's mind raced with implications. An ancient, multidimensional civilization, with technology so advanced it appeared magical. The scientific discoveries to be made were beyond imagination. "What determines sufficient development?" she asked carefully. The throne shape shifted again, extending a tendril of darkness toward her. "We test all who enter. Physical adaptability, temporal awareness, and most importantly, mental resilience." With startling suddenness, Arya felt herself falling, not physically, but mentally. Her consciousness plummeted through layers of memory and emotion, arriving at her deepest, most primal fears. She was a child again, lost in the underground caverns of Mars Colony 3, where she had grown up. The life support systems had failed, and darkness pressed in from all sides. She was alone, forgotten, as the oxygen slowly depleted. This had actually happened when she was 8 years old. She had wandered away from a school expedition and become lost in the maintenance tunnels. For 6 hours, she had believed she would die alone in the darkness before rescue teams found her. The experience had shaped her life, driving her toward understanding the unknown rather than fearing it. Yet, the terror of that isolation had never truly left her. Your fear is common among your species, the voice of the architect observed, now present within her mental landscape. Fear of isolation, fear of darkness, fear of running out of breath and time. The cavern around her child self grew darker, the air thinner. "This is the final trap," the voice continued. "The will negation field. It finds what you fear most and amplifies it until your consciousness surrenders." Adult Arya understood what was happening even as her younger self panicked. This wasn't just a memory. It was an active psychological attack designed to break her will. But unlike the physical and temporal traps, this one operated within the rules of her own mind, and minds could be disciplined. "You're right that I fear isolation and darkness," she admitted, forcing herself to remain analytical even as the remembered terror threatened to overwhelm her. "But you've made a critical error in your assessment." "Explain," the voice demanded, a note of curiosity entering its tone. "These fears didn't defeat me as a child, and they won't defeat me now," Arya stated, mentally pushing back against the enveloping darkness. "In fact, they drove me to become who I am, someone who walks into the void first so others can follow safely." She focused on that core truth, her willingness to face the unknown not despite her fears, but because of them. Her acceptance of the darkness as a necessary part of discovery. The mental landscape shuddered, the memory of the Martian caverns beginning to crack like thin ice. "Fascinating," the architect's voice seemed genuinely intrigued. "You utilize your fear rather than suppress it." "Fear is information," Arya replied, feeling the psychological trap weakening. "It tells us where our boundaries lie so we can choose whether to respect them or push beyond." With a final mental push, she shattered the will negation field. Reality reasserted itself, and Arya found herself once again in the spherical chamber. The throne had resumed its shifting, indistinct form, but the frozen members of Team Epsilon were now arranged in a perfect circle around her. "You have passed the final test," the architect's voice announced. "Few species have demonstrated such adaptability." The temporal fields surrounding the Epsilon team members began to fluctuate. "They will be released," the voice continued, "and a pathway opened for your return. But know this, you have only scratched the surface of the network. There are dimensions beyond your current comprehension." "Will you allow further exploration?" Arya asked, her scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "Those who pass the tests may proceed deeper." The architect replied, "But be warned, what you discover may fundamentally change your understanding of reality itself." The chamber began to reconfigure, walls flowing like liquid to create a direct pathway back toward the entry portal. The Team Epsilon members gradually accelerated in their temporal field, returning to normal time. Valquez was the first to fully awaken, stumbling forward with a disoriented expression. "Dr. Vale, how long have we been here?" "About 12 hours, Arya replied, checking her chronometer. "Though it may have felt different to you." 12 hours? He looked stunned. It felt like years. Centuries. As the other team members regained awareness, Arya deployed her final anchor, marking the exit from the dark dimension. Her mission was complete. She had mapped the traps and secured the safe return of Team Epsilon. Yet she knew this was just the beginning. The void portals weren't simply random phenomena. They were doorways to a vast, multidimensional civilization with technology and knowledge beyond human understanding. "Come on," she said to the disoriented team members. "I've mapped a safe path back. Stay close and follow exactly in my footsteps." Leading the rescued team through the network, Arya navigated around the traps she had meticulously documented. The gravity wells, the holographic duplicators, the vacuum pockets, all were avoided using the data she had risked her life to gather. When they finally emerged through the original portal back into Laboratory 7, they were met with shocked faces and immediate medical attention. Rylan was the first to reach them. His expression a mixture of relief and lingering anger at Arya's disobedience. "You broke protocol," he stated flatly as medical staff attended to the Epsilon team. "I completed the mission," she countered, removing her helmet, "and brought back more than just maps." Dr. Elena Sov approached, her eyes wide with excitement as she reviewed the preliminary data from Arya's suit. This changes everything we thought we knew about multidimensional physics. And you mentioned communication with a non-human intelligence. The architects." Arya nodded, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of her ordeal. "They built the network millennia ago. The portals we've discovered are just entry points to their transit system." In the days that followed, Arya worked with Elena and Min An to compile the complete Void Map, a comprehensive guide to navigating the dimensional network safely. Her detailed documentation of each trap and its solution would allow future teams to venture deeper with significantly reduced risk. The Multidimensional Academy hailed the mission as a historic breakthrough, focusing on the scientific achievements and the successful rescue of Team Epsilon. Arya received commendations and was appointed to lead the newly formed Advanced Dimensional Studies Division. Yet, in private moments, when the accolades and excitement faded, Arya found herself standing alone before viewport windows, staring out at the stars. The psychological trap had left its mark, not as trauma, but as a deeper understanding of her own mind. She had told the architect that fear was information, a tool rather than an obstacle. Now she needed to apply that philosophy to what lay ahead, because despite the maps and protocols and safety measures they had developed, the truth remained. They had only explored the antechamber of something vast and ancient. During her final debriefing with Central Command, an admiral had asked her a simple question. "Is it safe for us to continue exploration of these portals?" Arya had considered the question carefully before answering. "Nothing worthwhile is ever completely safe," she had replied. "But now we know what awaits us. We can prepare accordingly." What she didn't share was the final message the architect had placed in her mind as she left the dark dimension, a series of coordinates to a specific dimensional plane that supposedly contained technology capable of revolutionizing human civilization. A gift or a lure. She couldn't be certain. That information she kept to herself, stored in a secure file that only she could access. Some paths needed to be walked alone, at least at first. As Vanara's 3 sons aligned in a rare celestial event, casting the research station in golden light, Arya made her decision. She would return to the Void Portal, this time with full authorization and a specially trained team. They would follow her maps past the known traps, venture beyond the dark dimension, and discover what truly waited in the spaces between realities. Because that was her role, to walk into the void first, so others could follow safely in her footsteps, guided by the maps she created with such precision and care. And perhaps, in those unmapped dimensions, she would finally understand the true purpose of the ancient network and humanity's place within it. The void awaited, and Arya Vale, despite knowing its dangers better than anyone, was ready to step through once more.